Well, thanks so much, Rachel, for being here, and I know I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks so much, everyone, for also coming this afternoon. Can give a quick intro about myself so you all know who is talking, but also want to make this an open environment. Really, this is a fireside chat, but the luck is no fire, so let's just make this open for everyone. And I love to also learn and hear all of your experiences as well. So, just a quick intro. Is this? I think it's me back. Yeah, that's perfect. So, hi everyone. I'm Annie. I am the co-founder and CEO of H2Ok Innovations. We are a startup that is building proprietary sensors and self-contained AI. There we go. Can you hear me? So I'm Annie, I'm the co-founder and CEO of H2Ok Innovations. We are making proprietary sensors and also edge AI that optimizes the manufacturing process, working with some of the biggest players in multinational companies leading our industries, from companies like Coca-Cola and their factories to PepsiCo, for instance, AB InBev, Unilever, for instance, in hyperscale data centers across the world, optimizing cooling processes and beyond. So very hardcore. A little bit about my background. I studied computer science and economics at Harvard University, dropped out actually, and founded H2Ok Innovations with my older brother, who unfortunately couldn't make it here today. He's at his Brown 5-year reunion, so David will be missed. But that's kind of a little bit of background on myself. Kind of as a fun side hobby, I also compete in pageants, actually, as a fun fact. So I was the first Asian American Miss Massachusetts Teen USA in 2019. And placed top 15 at Miss Teen USA. And we'll be competing at Miss California USA this August. So if you guys are in Palm Springs, come in August 8th. Okay, so and super excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Rachel. Thank you guys for staying for the last panel and the best panel.
It's the best panel.
Yeah, it's the best panel. Yeah. So my background, you guys just heard somewhat of my background. Emory undergrad, and then I went to Schwarzman, and I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. So I didn't grow up with this sort of community, and I think it's been very rewarding being a part of TyCon, being a part of Gen 2, Gen 1, and so, I'm really excited to just do this fireside chat, just for a little bit of context. Think of it like we're having a chat with you guys around a fire pit, so we really want the young people in this room to engage with us, and so parents try to keep at a minimum. We really want to hear from the young girls. So, sort of moving on. This is meant to be casual, personal. We really want to talk about leadership. Obviously, Annie is an entrepreneur. We want to talk about entrepreneurship. And as a young woman, what it looks like is really exciting, as you can tell. Yeah. And so if you guys have any questions during us speaking, we won't ask if you have any questions. Just raise your hand and have a dialogue with us. Yeah. So I think the first theme that we're just going to jump into is sort of finding your voice. Yeah. And so you've been in spaces where women, especially Asian American women, have not been represented, and so definitely dive into that.
Look, I think the reality is that even the work I do today, everything really in my life, whether it is pageantry, I was always the only person who looked at me amongst 600 girls, for example. Even the work I do today, running my company in the clean tech, in the manufacturing, supply chain space, very gnarly traditional industries, 99.9% of the time, I'm the only person who looks like me in the room, 5,000 people, for instance. I'm the only woman, I'm the only young person, I'm the only person of color. I'll give you an actual example. So we are based out of a clean tech innovation community called Greentown Labs. It's the top clean tech innovation community in North America. So a lot of MIT professors spinning out companies, for example. Really incredible, both early stage all the way to Series D and beyond. And every month we have our CEO roundtables, and there's around 150 startups. There's only 2 women CEOs, me and someone else, right? And it used to be only one, which is me. Right, and so it was always you would sit in this conference room, this long conference room full of people who are 2 or 3 times older than me, people who have been in spaces for the past 40 years, for example, men specifically, and it was always me and then everyone else. And I think that like it's really easy, and let's be real, you know, I'm very straight and honest as an individual, and like you will go into conversations and people won't respect you because of what you look like. Just point blank, that's just the reality. And I think that like me not saying that or like saying anything else is a disservice, because I think that is a true lived experience. Like you will not be respected because of what you look like.
And you can tell based on the reaction,
100%.
how they speak to you versus how they speak to literally the person next to you.
100%. And I think what's really important is owning your authenticity of like what makes you different as your asset. That's like what pageantry really taught me. Because growing up, so you know, I started competing when I was around 14 years old.
I was gonna ask this question. I was like, where did it begin? Like, where did you find your voice? How did you?
It took a while. It took a while in that, like, you know, look, I was always the only Asian person or Asian girl in pageantry. So it would be like, you know, I would go to nationals. It'd be like 600 girls of like all these different divisions, and it'd be like 2 people who looked like me. So it was me and this other Asian girl. That's it. And she was maybe like 3 divisions younger. And so I was always the only person. And for a long time, I was very like insecure about it in a way that, you know, look, I was so different, and I thought because of that, like I was less worthy, but I never did well. And then when I changed that framework of thinking of like what makes you different is my asset of what makes you unique, and that's what I bring to the table, that's when I started doing well. And I became much more competitive, and I was much more successful. And I think that you carry that authenticity into everything you do in your life. And that like, yes, I will be the only person who looks like me in 5,000 people, but I'm the only person with my experience. I'm the only person who thinks like me. And like, I know that, hey, you can be someone totally different. You can be, you know, 40 years in the industry. You can have like a PhD in chemistry from Stanford, researching like sensors for 40 years. Like, I know that you can never do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I'm different, and like owning that like difference in background gives you a difference in perspective, and difference in approach, different like a creativity in your approach to solving decades-old problems that have been plaguing our most foundational type of society. So really, like as a woman, you can choose. Like I really believe perception is reality. If you think that you're not worthy, if you think that you can't do it, like people will disrespect you. If you think that you're less capable, you will be less capable. But if you think, okay, I am different, and that is what makes me more capable. So it's an asset I bring to the table. That's when you start winning. So I think really like be authentic, own that, and the people you have to change yourself for are the people you don't want to be around anyways.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up perception, because the second theme that I had was to talk about your personal branding. So I really feel like my personal branding began in college, but I had a similar experience to you. Growing up in Alabama and doing speech and debate, like Joy mentioned speech and debate, it's a wonderful activity, and the parents, if you force your kids to do anything, I would suggest to do something public speaking related. It's huge, right? Like your pageantry is public speaking, it's public everything. Yeah. And I think personal branding began for us at an early age, where you had to go into rooms with a bunch of white people and really convince them, really persuade them to vote for you or to whatever, right? And so I think that bled into college, and then my leadership journey and my personal branding story really developed in college. Mm-hmm. And by the time that I got to college, I no longer had imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. It was like I knew who I was, and I knew that I was competent, mm-hmm. and I knew I could be a leader. So I was like really confident in myself. And then that's how I got into student government. Mm-hmm. And so I started freshman year, and I just continued all the way until senior year doing student government, like mm-hmm. Like very visible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, like back to the last thing I said, right? Like, Rachel, I really think that the people you need to change yourself for are the people you don't want to be around anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So, for instance, like running a company, you know, I'm VC backed, so you go, you pitch to investors, you know, like I fundraise, I've done multiple rounds of fundraising. And venture capital is a traditionally very male-dominated industry, right? Like only around 2%, a little bit more than 2% of all VC dollars go to women CEOs. So as a woman CEO, and not only just a woman CEO but I'm a woman CEO working in manufacturing and supply chain, which is, you know, even more crazy and even more male-dominated. I think I got this advice from a mentor really early on, where, you know, I'm a person who, like, I think I'm very feminine. Like, I own my femininity.
Exactly.
Right, like,
I feel that too.
Right, like, I own my femininity, and he was saying that, Annie, like, if you have to, where VC is very male dominated, you can choose to present yourself in a more masculine way to appeal to investors. And you'll likely probably get more VC dollars, or like it'll probably be easier. But like or you can choose to be yourself, because the people you have to change yourself to be, or like to please, are people you don't even want on your team anyways. And so every single time, I always own who I am. Like I come in like, owning my femininity, because that is who I am.
Right.
And because of that, like, I actually ended up, for that round when I raised, like, we ended up closing it in 2 weeks and being oversubscribed.
Exactly.
Because like, you want to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I will also guarantee you that every room you walk into, although you're, again, might be seen as discounted, you know what I mean, like people won't respect you, like if you own your femininity, but I guarantee you no one's going to forget you when you walk out of the room.
And I think that the masculine traits are just because that's what's historically worked.
Exactly.
But when you embrace your femininity, you realize that there's a lot of benefits that people just don't realize. And I think my anecdote is when it was like an administrator who had been working with a really long time at Emory. At the very end of my presidency, she was like, "You were a very female president." It was like you led with you were really like a woman, like a female leader. And I didn't really know exactly how to take that at the time, but I realized what she meant was like the way that I led was more inclusive. It was kinder. And then ultimately it was more successful, and my organization was more successful that way.
Totally, and that's your power, and that's your own way, right? Like you don't have to do things the way everyone else does it. You do it your own way, and you create the path you want to walk. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's so powerful, and that you're really creating the future that you want to have. You're so I think that again, it's high agency behavior.
Right.
So yeah, totally.
And I want to pause for a second here. We're halfway through. I mean, to see if any of you guys have any comments, questions. I think there's young women here. Any questions? Yeah, in the back.
How do you deal with conflict and the stereotype of being seen as emotional in male-dominated spheres?
That's a great question. I think that, I think for me as a lead, or as a CEO, and wanting to continuously up-level and up-level my team as well, I think a lot in terms of, there is going to be conflict. I think that the way I approach it to my team is I set the expectation look, I'm very straight up and honest. I'm just going to say something straight up. You know what I mean? And you set that expectation, so people are okay, they expect that and they're not surprised by that. You're also anchoring on okay, what's common, a common incentive that aligns us both. In terms of, okay, maybe Rachel and I, let's just say, we have conflict where we disagree, but at the end of the day, we both have the same incentive where we want this organization to be better, we want to achieve our goals, we want to grow, we want to empower, right? And so I think that if you're anchoring on common root goals, but then maybe the approach might be different, you can open it for a more collaborative conversation. Really at the end, for our culture at H2Ok, I really believe a lot in ownership, autonomy, and empowerment, and giving people the ability to create the version of what they want to create to solve whatever problem they're solving. But at the flip side as well is people are really bought in because they feel like they created it, but also responsible and accountable. Right, and so I think it's a little bit in terms of culture of what's the culture of the organization, the environment that you're in. It's how you set the expectation and ultimately aligning on common incentives that ground together to have a more open conversation.
I actually want to sort of push back on the question, because the way that I surround myself with a lot of really strong female friends and leaders, and I think men are emotional. And I think women are more collaborative at the end of the day. And so I don't know.
I actually agree with that. That's actually very true, yes.
Sort of stereotype that women are really emotional and they I've never seen this.
I think people are emotional.
I think
overall.
Very
and there are people
emotional,
who are
exactly.
emotional and there are people who are less emotional. I mean, it's
But
not a difference between men and women.
My experience with the men that I worked with at school was that they were really emotional. And I was.
And not all men, but some men, you know what I mean? And also some women, not all women, you know what I mean? It's just, you will have people who are emotional and people who aren't, and then it's like how do you collaborate together, and it's like also how do you communicate, how do you give feedback, all of these are nuances in terms of just overall like how do you collaborate with an individual. But yes, 100%.
That was a great question. Yeah.
Nice. I actually have like an extra comment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have personally experienced this, but I've gotten into like conflicts as a leader of like a student organization with some male like inferiors.
Yes.
They think they're better than me because
This is exactly what I was referring to.
Yeah. Like I start getting heated and I'm like frustrated with that because I'm like, you're not taking me seriously, and that's upsetting. But the more emotional I get, the less serious I take it. How do you deal with like that specifically?
So I think that we take it a step back. So for me, for example, right, like I work in like supply chain manufacturing. So the people I work with, the customers I sell to, for example, my business partners are like chief supply chain officers of PepsiCo. You know what I mean? Or like so people who are experts in their spaces. So the first thing I like to always say, and this is just general, like how do you work with people, is you always have to earn your right in a conversation. So what I mean by that is you need to say something, whether it's like something really smart, something really sharp, something that's like spot on, in a way that like makes other people feel like, oh, you're like a trusted advisor, or you're like a peer, you're a thought partner with me. You're not like someone who's less. Like you need to be equal. So like how do you earn the respect really quickly of like, and earn your right in the conversation? And then you have to think about, what can I do that no one else can do? What's my competitive advantage, right? And then and I wouldn't say like, I think this is more just overall like, negotiations and also like doing business, but it's like, think about what are they strong at, where are they weak at, where am I strong at, where am I weak at, and how do I leverage my strengths in what I can bring to the table to earn my right in the conversation and now be a trusted advisor and go toe to toe with someone. So maybe say like, they won't take you seriously because of what you look like. But then you think about, okay, what can I do that no one else can do here, that they can't do? And how do I leverage that, just leverage that so much to earn my right to be here and earn my right to lead. You know what I mean? And so I think being a leader is more than just having a position. Because you have a position, but you won't have respect. It's not being a leader. So how do you actually earn that respect? It's by showing that I'm a value add in every single conversation I'm here, I'm adding value to you. Adding value to the organization.
And I think I've been in a lot of situations like the one that you're describing, and I think an easy hack, if it's like you feel like, okay, this is a lost cause, is that you just diffuse it with a joke. I think that's something that just sometimes helps. But yeah, there's no easy answer. Any other questions? Yeah.
Okay, I had a question for Annie when you mentioned that you dropped out of Harvard to pursue H2Ok, and that's a move that I think takes a lot of bravery and self-drive, and it's very impressive that you went into a field knowingly that you would have to kind of blaze your own path forward. Totally. So I'm wondering how you had the willpower to sort of make that difficult decision.
Honestly, I don't think it was that difficult, I'm gonna be honest. And the reason I say this is this is oftentimes what I think a lot about decision making. It's like, what's the downside? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Honestly, I thought about it and I was like,
waste of time.
No, but what's the worst that could happen? Let's just say I go create a company, it fails. I'm literally back to being a Harvard student. You know what I mean? With the dorm in a dining hall, boohoo. You know what I mean? It's not literally there's nothing that could happen. So it's if there's no downside, might as well just go and chase this wild vision, this massive undertaking that we're doing here at H2Ok Innovations of revolutionizing our most foundational sector of society. And so, I think that when you really put into perspective of wow, I'm actually so privileged to be where I am today and actually have this safety net of I just go back to Harvard, whatever. Then all of a sudden it feels so much easier, you know what I mean? And it's it actually makes no sense why I wouldn't do this. And so I think that's really the framework of thinking that I had. It's okay, things feel scary, but then when you actually put it into perspective, this is the least risk I will ever have in my entire life. I will only have more and more risk in the future as I get older, you know what I mean? And so might as well just make the most out of this.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So today we talked about embracing femininity, and the previous panels we talked about being confident and assertive and being key to success. And I often found that when I'm being, because it's unexpected for a Chinese young girl to be assertive, extremely confident, very direct, is actually a lot of times less effective, and people I become unlikable and they reject what I'm saying, just
Right.
because the way I'm portraying myself. How do you guys experience that, and how do you like navigate around finding that balance between these like embracing femininity and being assertive?
So I go first. I think for me, code switching is really important. So, you know, it's not necessarily, oh, I know that, you know, this person won't like this sort of behavior and therefore I have to, you know, like change myself for them. But it's more so like the tone of your voice or the words that you're using. You're not changing your personality, but I think there is the social skill in code switching that is really important. So I think, you know, sometimes the femininity is like really bubbly energy. I think like Annie's naturally more bubbly than me. I sort of am more like logical and sort of like not as serious. Like, I'm sorry, I am more serious, but I also have that like bubbly energy, right? And so I think I personally like, I actually use the code switching, but also I think the more you practice this like confidence, like public speaking, talking to people, meeting different people, and realizing like how they respond to you, I think you realize like what is the proper amount of assertiveness to use. And I think I'm trying to think like, imagine what you're talking about, and I see it. Like, I know what you're talking about when you're overly assertive and it feels forced. It's because it's not really genuine, and you feel like you need to be really like, yeah, serious. But I think it's a learned skill, but it's a social skill that like Asians typically aren't really taught at an early age.
Actually, that's so interesting because I think it's about like, to add a little bit more color into this, like thinking strategically about like, okay, I have this optimal outcome I want to drive in the situation. Like this is what I'm hoping, like my objective. So maybe like you will have to tweak your messaging. You know what I mean? Like you will have to tweak your messaging to, you know, you understand how this person thinks, like on the first principles level, like why they think the way they think, why they believe the way they believe, and how do you message it in a certain way to try to achieve your optimal outcome in a way that still is, again, authentic. So I think, like, look, if you're not someone who is very, you know, like, super outspoken and you know, it feels forced, then I think you should think about, hey, like, what feels genuine, what feels like my own power, right? Like, I think really own who you are, and don't try to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a balance of like, you know, putting yourself out there and continue to like develop this skill like public speaking, and like as you become more comfortable, like you start, you start feeling like you're more and more, you know, like
It's a painfully learned
yes,
skill.
exactly. I'll give you an example of like when I raised my Series A just now, or like last 2 quarters ago. So my brother and I, right, like go to meet the investor, and this is how I think, you know, as a CEO, like I'm the one mostly speaking. So what I say, like this is word for word what I said. I said, Rachel, as investor, like say Rachel, you give like a quick intro. So I tell like, Rachel, if you walk away and remember nothing from this conversation, just remember this, that we're born to do this. And we're building an empire. And we will stop at nothing until we get it done. And I think that like, you know, just like, say it straight up. And I feel like some people are like, oh my God, like, whoa, you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm gonna listen to you. So then it's like, you know, and I think that's something that like, a lot of my women peers like struggle with that. But then sometimes, like once you start doing it, you're like, okay, you know, like this is kind of, you know, I'm totally here to revolutionize an industry. I'm totally here to build an empire. I'll stop nothing until we get it done. And then you start like, that perception is reality. And you start like fueling that, and then, you know, it fuels you forward. So I think that like, you know, sometimes just, again, put yourself out there. Call it as it is, straight up. Yeah.
Any other questions from the Gen 2?
Yeah, I would just want to ask Annie, so as a female CEO, how have you noticed that your leadership style might be different from your female counterparts?
I think that as I've progressed, it evolves over time, and I continue learning and developing this. So, you know, like and I think this is the same for a lot of startups. Like when you first start, you're a small team, you're like early, it's more like less serious, or like you're a little bit less serious, and more just kind of like more like friends, and like hacking together, like trying out something. And as it develops, like you become more and more of like a leader, if it makes sense. I think that I'm going to be very honest. Like my style is I think and in terms of work, like I'm very intense and I'm very hardcore, and I like own that. Like when I go talk to candidates, I tell people straight up, like, Rachel, I'm gonna like straight up and honest, because let me see, my mic just died, but we'll switch mics. Okay, here we go. So I say like, look, Rachel, like imagine you're a candidate, right? It's like I'm just to make sure we're on the same page. I'm very straight and honest, but like. No, we're here to build an empire, and every single day, every single one on our team comes with an empire-building mentality. And I'm also gonna be very honest with you, like this job is not easy. It's gonna be very hard, it's gonna be very challenging. Look, like, what we're doing is gnarly, right? Like, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But like, not everyone's building empire. So, you know, like, it's gonna be very difficult, it's gonna be challenging, but I guarantee you will not learn more anywhere else than here at H2Ok Innovations and create more impact. It's like, this is the way I phrase it, and it's very like, just straight up, and that's like kind of my style. But everyone has their own style. I think like, back to the earlier question, I'm also gonna be very honest, like, you can be liked or respected. And I think that like, you know, also I look at a lot of like managers, like leaders on my team, and I continue to like mentor them, and you know, there's like, also new people who come on our team who have like amazing leadership styles that I also continue to learn from them as well, and it like shapes, you know, the way that I lead. But I think that like, how do you earn the respect of everyone? I think that like, that respect is something that's really critical, and like what do you bring to the table that will earn that respect? Yeah, and show that.
We have 3 minutes left. Let's do like fast 3.
Sorry.
Good.
Are slow. Yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like typically when you're kind of moving up and progressing in your career, you need sponsors or advocates that kind of mentor you. So how did you find those people in your space, especially given that a lot of the people more higher up are men?
Like you can have men, like or like you can have male mentors. Actually, some of my best mentors are men. So like, you know, I can honestly count on like one hand people who've just had instrumental impact in my entire like my life and also my career journey. And I think honestly like a lot of them are men. So like, you know, that's not like you can have male mentors. I think what's overall like probably more technical your question to how do you build mentors is coming in with deep empathy, with gratitude, and kind of this give first mentality. So for example, if I ever wanted an intro to someone, I would say, Rachel, like, you know, this is one person you're connected to, I'd love it, like, if you'd be willing to introduce me to them. And I've already written here a forwardable email that you can just then like forward to them, so you don't have to like write an email like introducing me. So I've already done the legwork for you. I've like researched and like make it easy for them. I've researched coming in like very well prepped into the conversation. So I'm like here, right? Like I'm not asking stupid questions, you know what I mean? Like I'm earning the respect. And then like people want to help you. You just have to make it easy for them to help you.